Last night they gave a reverse engineering on firmware. Next Saturday, not this Saturday, they're doing a red team boot camp. It's 8 hours. It's free. Both of them were. You guys might be interested in doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that'll be cool. I'm going to just, Marshall's up next. So I think we're live. Can someone double check just to make sure? Chris, thank you everybody for coming. You know, normal spill, we usually do sometimes like the little red hen story, like I need help, please help me. That has not been effective to date. So we're gonna switch tactics. Let's switch instead of me saying I need help to this can help you, right? And it's actually true. So my career the trajectory of my career has gone up since I've started speaking. And this is a known thing within the community, right? So you have a couple people that you know of in the community. Some of them have been in the community for a long time. Others have just started, but each of them has their career elevated because they've spoken publicly. We are not that great of and big of a forum, but it's a great place to kind of learn some of those techniques that'll help you in your career later on. Me, myself, like I said, when I started this, I was doing most of the talks. It helped me a lot to get things across, how to organize and learn things really quickly, but also how to talk to large audiences of people, which is also useful. I've gotten a number of opportunities that came my way just because I speak here a lot, right? Right or wrong, right? Some of them like, hey, I think you can do these things. Like, I've never heard of that before, but cool, you know? So I'm going to switch tactics a little bit, and maybe what I'll do is occasionally when we have different speakers, I will tell them ahead of time, just ask them how is publicly speaking has helped your career, right? I won't do it today because I haven't told any of the speakers, but again, we'll switch tactics. I think this will be very valuable to each person. And so instead of me asking for help, I'm going to say, let me help you by presenting, all right? So with that, Christine is going to be up first.
Yes, okay. So I guess, if you don't mind, we can switch chairs. Okay. Is the camera on and showing?
Let's switch the camera.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I'm bad.
Since I have no slides.
Oh wait, that's what I wanted to do. There we
go.
All right.
Hello. Did anybody check to make sure that I'm coming out? Okay, fabulous. Okay, so I did not prepare any slides. At the Jazz Disc, which is where I work, we occasionally have these things where people have gone to conferences and then they come back and they talk about what they learned at the conference so that they could share it with the group. So I suggested to Andre that it might be a nice thing to do for the Goddard Developers Group, since we can't, all of us, go to all the conferences. So last week I was at SciPy. It was my first time going there. SciPy is the parent organization that has a lot of the scientific computing libraries for Python, like the biggest ones like NumPy, Matplotlib, scikit-learn, like a whole bunch there. So if you've ever done any scientific computing with Python, then you've probably used something in SciPy. So I kind of want to tell everybody you should go. If you do stuff with scientific computing in SciPy, it's a fabulous conference. Like, all the people who are the developers, the committers, the main committers for these projects are there. They announce like what's coming up, what their concerns are. They have tutorials. Then there's the conference proper, and then there's actually 2 days of sprints. So if you've ever wanted to get involved with an open source project, and you're interested in getting involved more with any of these scientific computing major libraries, it's a very nice venue, a very nice conference to go to. Okay, so what did I get out of it? So the first thing was Jupyter Notebooks. So who here has actually programmed in Python? Okay, fabulous. Who here has run a Jupyter Notebook? Okay, so Jupyter Notebooks started out as IPython notebooks years ago, And what they are is there's a little server that sits on your computer or somewhere else, but you can start it up on your computer with the command Jupyter Notebook. And it gives you blocks where you can type in code and then execute them. So in that page, anything you've executed is like in memory, any variables that you've defined. What's really nice about this is then you can save the notebook and you can give it to somebody else, and then they can run it and see exactly what you did. Furthermore, if you do any kind of plotting, then those plots like appear in the notebook. And in fact, there are interactive plots now. So for example, you could do a scatter plot where people could actually zoom in and play a little bit with the visualizations. So for education, for sharing code with people, it's really fabulous. And it was such a nice, and became so popular for Python that it became Jupyter Notebooks. So you can now actually create notebooks in other languages. There's sort of an official interface for it. So at SciPy, basically, everybody who was showing any code was doing it in Jupyter Notebooks. That's the way you do it. It's a very nice interface. So the thing that's even sort of added to that kind of what's the word? Not environment. Yeah. Is now, has anybody ever heard of Binder? Anyone for Jupyter? Okay, so Binder is really cool. I don't know where they're getting this compute from, but in Binder, you can go to a web page and bring up a Jupyter Notebook and run the stuff in there, and it runs on some server somewhere, and this is free. So you can actually, I mean, there are limits to like how much you can do with it, but you can actually give this to somebody and say, hey, open this notebook in Binder and run things. And all they need to have is a browser. So they don't have to install Python. They don't have to have this stuff on their machine. They can just run it in there. And then furthermore, you can create a project on GitHub. And if you configure it correctly, then Binder will go to your GitHub. It will get like I guess you have to put like the requirements, like the dependency list, yeah, in there. It'll install those dependencies for you and then bring the thing up and you can run these Jupyter Notebooks. So in terms of like lowering the barrier to entry for running whatever your code is, they don't have to install anything. They don't have to know anything about like dependencies, nothing. All you do is you go to Binder, you give them your GitHub link, they hit a button and it brings up some kind of compute somewhere and they get to run it. So if what you want to do is share anything related to Python stuff, this is a really, really nice way to do it. Okay. Number 2, Anaconda. Like, do you guys use Anaconda Python or do you use like the OS, whatever your OS has for Python? Anaconda? OS? Okay. So, huh?
I use pipenv.
Okay, so that's right. But is the pipenv part of an Anaconda Python installation, or is it like maybe you're not sure, maybe
Actually,
somebody
I'm
else?
usually using Docker when I'm actually executing code. So.
Okay, so in the Docker container, are you using the OS's Python, or are you like installing Conda?
Well, it's the Python official Docker images, so I guess that's.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So everybody was using Anaconda Python at SciPy, basically. And the reason is because when you do a Conda install, it takes care of the dependency tree to make sure you have, the right, basically that all the versions will work together. Whereas pip and pipenv, which I have also used, like you can end up in a state where like some of your packages work and some of them don't, and then you like just sort of update everything and hope that they'll all work together. So Conda is nice, and like with Python, there's pip and pipenv, which gives you a virtual environment, which is like, these are the packages for my project right now, and it doesn't interfere with like the main Python installation as opposed to pip. Conda has the same thing. You can create a Conda environment for your project, install the packages you need just for that project, and then switch to another environment for another project. So, trying to make sure I don't go over here. Okay. De facto standards. So this was very interesting. Okay, who's used NumPy? Anyone? All right. Who's used pandas? Anyone? Okay. So one of the things that they talked about at the conference was that the NumPy and pandas interfaces have become sort of de facto standards. So for people who aren't aware of NumPy, NumPy is for multidimensional array manipulation. And so it gets around the issue that Python is an interpreted language. So if you do a for loop, it's going to take a long time. So instead of calculating an average via a for loop, you just ask NumPy to calculate the average for you over the array, and it does that in an optimized C function. Okay, so there have been a number of libraries that have seen the NumPy interface and been like, that's fabulous, but I want to do it on a GPU, as an example. Or that's fabulous, but I want to run it in a distributed environment. And so what they've done is that they've written libraries that have the same functions that NumPy has, but allow you to run it on a GPU or whatever. But they're not quite the same. And so actually one of the things that they're going to be working on soon is getting all the people who have these array interfaces like Dask and CuPy to come together and agree on like what array functions should be there and make it more of a standard rather than a de facto standard. Pandas is a data frame interface. And so data frame, think CSV file. So you have like columns with headers. There are a number of other libraries, including VAX, again, Dask, also implement basically this data frame. And so they're also working there on trying to harmonize those so everybody's on kind of the same page. Dask. So for distributed computing, if you're going to do it in Python, Dask is very cool. So if you are running on your personal laptop and it has multiple cores, then you can use Dask to do a lot of this stuff, and it will take advantage of those multiple cores. You can also set it up with a cluster, and it will do those kind of computations for you in a distributed cluster. It takes care of memory and doing all of that. So basically, all you have to do is say, calculate me an average. You don't have to worry about threading any of that. If you've done anything with Spark, it's kind of a similar sort of idea to Spark. Let's see, what else? Data visualization. Yeah, so this was very cool. There are now a number of libraries that are designed to produce interactive visualizations around Jupyter notebooks. So it's really nice. So you can add, say, a bar that allows somebody to select, I don't know, a percentile or something, and then that will change like other graphs that you've created. So you can actually create quite sophisticated interactive visualizations and tie visualizations together with these tools. So if that is something you do, you might want to look into this. Most of these tools are designed for a few people looking at the visualization. They're not designed for thousands of people, because behind the scenes is still, say, a Jupyter server or some other sort of smaller server rather than like some server cluster. But it's very cool. I went to a tutorial on Hypothesis, which is very fun for testing, unit testing, where you may have heard of this before. Like a normal unit test, you generally go in there and you say, okay, this is my input, this is the output I expect, this is the input, this is the output I expect. Hypothesis, instead, you say, this is the kind of input, like this function takes an integer, and this is the kind of output I expect, like float or something. And so then what it does is it generates inputs and it tries to break your code, basically. So
Fuzzy.
Yeah.
Testing.
Yes, it was heavily inspired by that.
Yeah.
So the guy who did the tutorial, he said that the two most useful uses for this are, number one, making sure that your function doesn't throw an exception when it shouldn't throw an exception because it got a weird input. So there, you're not even telling it anything. You're just saying, this takes an integer. Give me any integers and see if it crashes, which is a super easy test to write. And number two, if you have cases where you have to encode something and then decode it, like you're serializing to disk or the network and then bringing it back out again, this works really well because all you have to do is say, okay, here's the kind of input, serialize it, deserialize it, and make sure that the input matches the deserialized output. So those are very easy tests to write, don't require a lot of thought, and work really nicely with hypothesis. Okay, and I think that that's probably my 15 minutes. So if anybody has any other questions. Highly recommend this conference. People are so nice. Nicest conference I've ever been to.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Are we, the difference between Juniper Labs
Jupyter.
versus Hub? Are we getting to
Hub,
like,
you mean GitHub?
no, I thought it was Lab versus Hub. I was going to ask, do we have the equivalent of a Jenkins versus Hudson kind of, where people are now splitting off into?
Oh, Jupyter Lab versus Jupyter Notebook?
Yeah.
Jupyter Lab is just the newest interface to Jupyter Notebooks. So anything that you had that was a notebook, you can either run in Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Lab is nice because you get multiple tabs in one screen, and you get some more context, and there's some more features, but it's basically the same thing. It's
It's still the same group. It's
the
not
same
anything
group, yes.
fracturation.
yes. So Jupyter Labs, I found it slightly buggy, maybe because it's new, but yes, give it a try.
So next up is Marshall. Quick tidbit: I don't write Python, but I subscribe to like 1,000 podcasts. One of them is Talk Python to Me. A lot of things you brought up was brought up in that podcast
cool.
series. So a couple other things as well. So if you want to get into things and you don't have the budget to go to a conference, podcasts are a great way of kind of knowing what's coming up in the industry.
Which podcast?
Talk Python.
All right. I swear you were just about to step on stuff from my talk, but then you moved away from it. So that was cool.
Rules
So
of engagement, 15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. Okay. I'm not just stop me when I'm done because. So I went to PyCon in early May in Cleveland, and it does indeed rock. There's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, there's an Indians game. The baseball stadium's a couple blocks from the hotel and the conference center. It was great.
So what about the conference itself?
We'll get to that. Really cool architecture in Cleveland. This is just like on the way from the airport to my hotel. They have ornate stonework and these really cool stories. But anyway, so Cleveland rocks. Anyway, so I just summarized some of my favorite talks. This is not one of my favorite talks, but it was about decorators. It was called Practical Decorators. All the talks are available on YouTube. And one thing while putting this together and looking through lots of talks, I realized, hey, there's a lot that I didn't see that I want to go back and see. So that's a great thing. It's probably true of cyber.
Yes, yep. I think Jim actually posted the link and the Slack channel.
I have it's in my slides, so
Yeah. So I want to learn about decorators. These, if you program Python, has anybody ever used a decorator? A few. So you see them with this little @ sign sometimes before your function, and every time you call this function, your decorator also does something. I really don't know exactly how they work. I've tried to learn how they work. I went to this talk trying to figure out how they work. I still don't know how they work. But essentially, like you have the slow add function where you add two numbers and it delays it. And then this log time decorator will tell you how long it took them to add. And there's other uses like logging, and you can.
So Hypothesis uses decorators.
It does. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's good to know.
Decorators in general, sometimes they rewrite your function. Add things around it.
Yes.
Like a function that wraps
The
your
way
function.
that's what they explained it as. It's like it's a function
Mhm.
that wraps your function.
Right. So I've yet to come across a good reason to use a decorator. So
That's a great one. We
So
use
this is the
decorators a
design
lot.
pattern, right?
sorry, what?
It's a design pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aspect oriented programming uses a lot of decorators as well.
I've used them in other languages.
Maybe I will come across.
Python.
A lot of asynchronous programming frameworks in Python use them as well. So I was working on a program that was heavily asynchronous using the web application messaging protocol, and it was built on, well, you can either use with async IO or twisted, but it used a lot of decorators, like a lot.
There you go.
Okay.
It was like half decorators.
So I look forward to finding about your uses of decorators. Okay. I went to a tutorial on web programming, which was good because I'm just starting a job that involves web programming, and I've never done this. So, but it was a really unique. It was a good introductory class. It showed if your 3 files, your HTML, your CSS, and your Python Flask code, and how if you change one, it will affect the whole website. And so it was a very cool, simple tutorial. One of the things was called Python Performance for Poets. So this is about optimizing your code for people that don't necessarily have a computer science background. And they present a bunch of tools where you can run your code. It tells you, how many loops or what line of your code is running the longest, and and he kind of made it, like a treasure hunt. Like, this code will help you isolate the line of code in your program that's slowing you down, and zap it and improve it.
So what's the library called?
I don't remember any of the library.
There's a thing that does a thing.
There's a thing that does a thing.
And it's in a place.
Yeah, I put this together this morning. So
That's all good.
there wasn't even a video of this one. This was like it
Oh.
was sponsored by Capital One. So
I can tell you got a lot out of it.
I did. So it actually, but it inspired me to go optimize some code. And so like 2 weeks later, I actually had some users of my GUI come in and say, this is way too slow. This is taking 3 times what the old version did. And I was like, oh, I've got to do something about this. So I went like line by line, like hunting for slow code, and eventually I figured it out.
Cool.
This is another good use, like I said, of that decorator pattern. Like what we do is we just wrap every function call gets wrapped in one of those things. You don't have to put it in the code all over the place, but then you can just use that out to somewhere that you can do analysis on and say, where's the slow code? Because the slow code sometimes is not where you think slow code.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, most times.
Yeah, MATLAB had a thing like built into the MATLAB UI that was like so useful, because it would be some line that you'd completely forgotten you wrote that you did some long for loop or something.
Yeah, or just wrote to the console and turned out that's the slowest thing. There's always one big ugly function.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So one of the most useful things were the breakout sessions. Yes.
It is good, yeah.
So the VS Code folks were there. They had a breakout session. So everyone join us in our room. If there's something you don't like about VS Code, we will optimize your system to do it. So we will do these features. Like so they said that you could use VS Code to run a remote system.
That's awesome. Have you guys
Yes.
tried that? Yeah.
So I wanted them to get it to run on the NCCS, which is here, which you need 2-factor authentication. And
Did they get it working?
no, they did not. But they tried really hard.
We got working on Pib.
Oh, really?
So if you can use Pib,
Okay.
Well, they, well,
We'll have to talk then, because
maybe it's new since March.
yeah. So we did not. There's a representative from the Qt, which is a GUI application programming framework. I'm actually working on a Qt project. Most of the people in the room were running PyQt, which is a Python implementation of it. And this guy was kind of trying to sell everybody on the Py side, which is the Qt implementation of Python. This is complicated, yeah. There's Qt, and then there's a Python implementation called PyQt that most everybody uses. That's done by this other company, and it's not very well documented, is what I found. So the Qt company is trying to do their own implementation. Hopefully, it's going to be a little bit better. So if I ever do another project, I'll try the Py side, or it's called Qt for Python now. I went to a session on open source and government. I actually met somebody along the way. She works for the Federal Election Commission. Click on this. I suppose if I ran this as a slideshow, I could click on this. Let me see.
Just double click on it. You should be able to copy it.
Yeah. Now where am I going to put it?
Are you not a Mac person?
I have a Mac, but I'm clearly not a Mac person.
So those two statements are not actually the same, because I have a Mac. I don't even play one on TV.
Yeah.
That's why you use Outlook.
Anyway, so this is this was all done in Python, but this is some election fundraising data. And we talked about some open source stuff in government, which was kind of interesting. All right. Yeah.
In trouble.
We're going to stay away from the politics
Yes.
for right now. I showing it for the data. Okay. Another interesting thing they had something called charlas, which were talks in Spanish in Python Qt. So I went to a couple of those. I don't speak much Spanish, but it helped me, it's good practice. So what am I doing next? Trying to go to DjangoCon in 2019. Again, I'm on this job where we do web programming in Django. So this conference got me excited for the next conference. So, and then this Intel distribution of Python, this is something I learned about a couple of days ago, and some Intel folks did some training. So it's basically the Anaconda distribution that we all know and love, but the NumPy and scikit-learn and all of those algorithms are optimized for Intel hardware, and they do some other Intel optimization. So they're saying they get really good results for running numerical algorithms super fast. So I think that's a cool thing to be looking out for in the future. So yeah, so that's my talk.
Nice. Any questions for Marshall while we switch over?
How big is PyCon?
Ooh,
It's like hundreds, thousands?
thousands.
Thousands.
Definitely thousands.
You're gonna enjoy this. This is gonna
All right, Jim, same rules, 15 minutes or less.
All right. So, I work for 610.2, and we're slowly getting into the cloud. A bunch of people have been to reInvent at Vegas, and I'm in operations, so I haven't been able to go to stuff like that. So I do outside of stuff to learn cloud stuff. But I was able to go to this public sector summit. It was down in the convention center in DC for 2 days. You get down there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and you come home at like 8 o'clock at night. But it was intense. It was quite informative. Let's see. And what I should say, maybe I should have jumped this. So what I have is, no, this is going to work for me. Huh?
Don't worry. That works.
Yeah, I was going to say, whatever get. Yes, I am a mouse guy. Why didn't it copy?
Do you want to just click the start button up there? Maybe that. How do you start the presentation? That's not a touch screen.
Yeah. Oh, my laptop is.
Go to slideshow. But none of us are, what do you call this? What's this thing called?
Are you Apple equivalent of the control key?
No.
Yeah, there's
Oh, it's
slideshow.
PowerPoint. It's not
PowerPoint.
Google Spread or
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this gonna
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So let me try to click on this. So one of the things I was what? Okay, what did? How do I?
It's okay.
It opened in presentation mode. That's the problem.
Well, now how do I get it to show the actual HTML, the link?
That's what the second computer's for.
Exactly. That's what tech help is for. Tech support.
Okay, maybe.
Nope.
Yeah.
This is why I like
Yeah, now I know why.
forget
So,
PowerPoint.
Don't put links in presentations. It never works out well.
well, this whole thing is
Don't
links.
click on links in presentations. It doesn't work out.
So one of the things, as I was talking to people, was like, it's a sales pitch. Yes, it's a sales pitch. And if you go downstairs into the floors, you will get bombarded with who do you work for? How much money do you got that can buy, that you can spend on us? But the thing that I want to show and to make people aware of is they do everything from introductory up into expert mode. And I will tell you, my favorite actually isn't even on those three. My favorite, all those get recorded. And there's a playlist on YouTube for that. My favorite was the ones where they did it on the first floor. There was no cameras. They put two AWS developers in a room with 200 people, and they started getting hammered with questions. Serverless, costs. I mean, basically, their whole hour was these people wanted answers. And I wish I just stood there with my camera or my recorder and just did it, because it was the best part of these. Now, I will tell you that these presentations, there are some really good ones. And again, they are also online. And I will give you the links. I will give you the links to the YouTube playlist, the slides. All you have to do is want to learn and commit to some time. Now, I will give, since Andre brought up, I need to switch back.
Nice.
Click on PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's good on the PowerPoint bottom right.
Bottom right.
Keep going.
Yeah, that's,
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
there's part.
What?
PowerPoint actually did the browser.
All right.
Okay.
Full screen.
Well, no, don't go too far. I am now going to change the order. There is one presentation that was, and I don't want to get us in trouble
Yes,
again.
please don't play any presentations. We just got her right the street back.
So does anybody know who Joseph Foster is? He is responsible for getting us into the cloud as an organization at Goddard. He did a 20-minute presentation, and then the sales pitch came behind it. So that YouTube link is the actual presentation. You only need to watch the first 20 minutes of just him, but I am going to try and so go back to, yes, I know I'm going to get myself in trouble.
It looks scary like you're about to play this.
No, this actually, this is a slide.
All right.
How do I switch over?
You gotta remove yourself from full screen.
Okay.
Presentation.
Now we should actually have a soft scale class just to do
All these are lessons learned the hard way during presentations. All right. There you go.
Okay, so he goes into who we are, what we have, but this is the slide that at 16 minutes and 50 seconds, he starts explaining what he wants to do for us. And what he called for is he wants to be the Martha Stewart of cloud services, meaning he wants to have recipes. And one would be mission cloud. So each mission, this is the setup and the use cases associated. Science, which is what we do. And then for like overhead. Now, you were actually involved in some of this.
Yeah. They have a few pilot programs that are happening, and they have a community of practice that meets, supposed to be once a month. They're working on ATO. One of the things that they mentioned is that they're, instead of like saying, remember, I think Christine, you did talk about a year in AWS.
Yeah.
And Jim was there and he asked a question about
Right.
which services do you want? And you were like, that's kind of stupid. I don't want to pick the crayon that I want. I want all the crayons in the box.
Right.
So they took that to heart. So they said what they're doing is ATOing the entire thing. As long as you meet the security policy, you fall in their security plan, you don't have to get ATO for a new service that comes online. So that's the
That is
difference between
nice.
how they're doing it versus how it's been done in the past.
Right, that's because ESDIS, their cloud, every service is getting sort of individually okayed.
Yeah, which will take forever, and you're always behind. And you,
Always,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, by the time you get something else. Yeah.
Right.
There's
That's
a lot
very
more.
interesting. That's good to know.
There's a lot more to it, and they have. If you're interested, let me know. I can send you the invite for the community practice meetings that they have.
And they canceled next week's.
Yeah, they canceled a bunch of them so far. So, but you'll at least be on the group, and Joe and Jim are very open to feedback and comments.
Yeah,
So if you email them, they'll respond.
yeah, we're actually working. We have some cloud access to them as well. So
But that I felt was like really important. I don't know how far you guys are trying to get into the cloud. As an overall, there was one pitch about 5 years ago that said we were supposed to be in a cloud within 5 years. They kept pushing it off.
And they also call APIs APIs too. So.
seriously,
No, it happened to me. You weren't there? Oh yeah, the presentation. Like, yeah,
I've
we're gonna
never
get
heard-
APIs, and then here's a picture of the cloud. It's like wires on the wall, on the ground. It's crazy. These people that lead in our group.
oh my gosh.
Before Joe got here.
Well, at least Joe said he's from the intelligence community. He helped set
No,
up
he's good, yeah.
their environment.
He very much pushes platform as a service though. Like that's his thing, which is not always the right thing. But
You can't use the same paradigm for everything.
But he also wants to. It was in the. But I am going to give you guys the link so that you
I
guys can
think
go
you're
look
on
yeah, it looks like
at
we are.
everything that they filmed. I gotta admit, the pony show was, you went into a big conference room. There were 5 different speakers, as in platform, presentations, and you picked up a pair of headphones. And depending on what color they said that that they were associated with. Yes. And by the end of the day, it was called silence. And by the end of the day, whatever was the most popular ripped off everybody else, and they would go into another section, grab those headphones, and then change them to that color that they wanted. I also met people who said, I sat between 2 presentations and just did switch between back and forth. It drove me nuts. Either trying to get the headphones, or you couldn't ask questions and all that. It was, like I said, I was down in the saloon, which was one of the smallest rooms, and hundreds of people are jamming themselves in there, and it got really hot very quickly.
But yeah, they put the security guard there, and they didn't allow more people to go in because it was so crowded.
Well, there were supposedly 18,000 people signed up, and I thought the number was more like 13 or 15 actually attended.
So
You want?
All right.
all right.
Oh, I'm
All
off.
right.
Yeah.
Yep, you're done.
All right. So really cool.
I'll send out. You'll send out the.
I'll send out the notes.
Notes. Yep.
So I'm going to talk about feature flags, but really quickly, along the lines of what Jim talked about, if you ever get a chance, some of the conference, they have these silent parties where everyone's wearing a headphone. You can dial your own thing in, and everyone's partying. There's no actual music outside. It's a really cool experience because you can party to your own music, and they can party to their own music. And everyone's just having a great time, and you can have conversations in a party and hear each other if you choose to. It's pretty cool. All right, feature flags. Who's heard of feature flags? Who's using feature flags?
Are we talking like debug, dash debug?
No. Everyone uses feature flags, just don't call it that. And we'll get there.
Okay.
All right. So what is a feature flag? So generally speaking, a feature flag is just a toggle or most likely a Boolean within your code that switches. You use some if statement. Say, if this, then go this way. If that, go that way. That's the severely oversimplified version of a feature flag. But that one, most people do. If I ask you a question now, who does this? How many hands would go up?
That's logging, debug logging.
Yeah, so everyone does it, but now let's turn it up, right? So usually use it, like I say, you want to say, can you go to this admin area, or can you not? Who can see it, who can't see it? That sort of thing. Everyone does that. So the how. There are 3 broad categories of how you can do feature flags. Anyone want to try to take a stab at what those 3 general categories are?
Roll your own.
Yeah, it's one of them. She just mentioned one.
Switching and something else.
Yeah, so that's the implementation with the strategy itself. So you already named one. That's roll your own. Almost everyone does this, right? Roll your own. Write it yourself.
Guess.
Yeah, because anyone else want to mention any of the other ones? Just take a guess at them.
Environment
Like
variables.
SAS, something like that. Just yell it out.
Yeah, so I took a DevOps class recently, and they were doing feature flags as a service.
Yeah, so as a service, that's a big one. And then the third one, it's like in the middle between rolling your own and having a service. I don't have time for this. All right, come on.
Okay, it's actually
So,
hilarious.
Roll your own, right? The one in the middle is use a library. And then the last one is use a service, right? So you notice these 2 are in yellow because they're important because they're the ones I'm actually going to do a presentation on. The one in the middle, you can kind of figure out how it goes. It's not that bad. So why use a feature flag? You can decouple deployment from rollout. So how many people are doing continuous integration? All right, so that's like 2 people, right?
That's it.
So how do you do continuous integration without feature flags? Because when you say continuous integration, what I think you both mean is that we have a feature branch, we do the feature on the feature branch, and then when it's completely done, we merge it back in, and that's how we're doing continuous integration.
You mean continuous delivery or?
No, continuous integration. So continuous integration usually means you're doing trunk-based development, right? You're merging those things back in frequently. And when I say frequently, I mean more or less like daily. In order to do that, if you have a feature that takes a little bit longer than another one, then how do you merge that back in without deploying it, right? Because now you're talking about deployment, separating deployment from rollout. And that's what feature flags help you to do. They help you to separate those two things out. So each of those things is risky. Deployment is risky, rollout is risky. So feature flags allow you to separate the two. You can deploy something without rolling it out.
What do you mean by deploying it without?
It's
rolling
in production, but it's not live.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Basically, it's not turned on.
It's not turned on,
Okay.
right? So they're deploying it, rolling it out to production is risky. Will it break? Will stuff fall down? Turning it on is another risk, right? Will it break? Will stuff fall down? You can separate those two with feature flags, right? So you continuously roll out features into production, but they're not live. All right?
That seems like cheating.
No, it is cheating in a great way, right?
Yeah,
But we'll talk about more.
You don't have to worry about that. That's the risk.
Yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit more. All right, jumped ahead. So, all right, I mentioned this already too as well. So if you have longer tasks and shorter running tasks, this is how you get them both to be continuous integration at the same time. The longer running tasks, you just turn the feature flag off, keep going, deploy, make sure your code is always working when you deploy. Like it's not going to break. There's no build errors or whatever the case may be, which should be the case when you're checking code in. All right, we talked about that in the source control thing a little while ago. Now they're all tied together, right? Soft launches. Anyone heard of this? We kind of talked about it a little bit. So it allows you to roll out to all users. You can roll out to all the users, but you can also roll out to targeted users, roles, or groups.
So this is Canary.
This is Canary. So there's so many things. This feature flags enable so many of the DevOps things that you heard about before, right? But how you do them is feature flags, I should say, not branches, sorry. So I can say this feature rolls out to this particular group or this particular user, right? So let's say I have a beta test group, then they get the features early, right? And then someone else gets the features after them, and then everyone gets the features after that, right? All right, percentage of users. Why would we use that? Anyone?
A/B testing.
A/B testing, right? So if you want to say which feature works better, right? Then you turn it on, say this, we're going to roll it out to 10% of our users. We're going to test to see what the results are. If it works out well, then we'll keep it. We'll roll it out to the rest of the users. If it does not work, we'll just delete it. And it never happened for 90% of our users, right? So A/B testing is done through feature flags, right? All right. That's a bullet that apparently something was going to happen there, but it didn't happen.
You've been shot.
Yeah, I also wrote this morning.
I didn't use a feature flag.
Yeah, there was a feature flag. That feature was turned off. It was deployed, but not rolled out. All right. So dark launches. Anyone want to take a guess at what this is? I kind of mentioned it before.
You're hiding things.
Yeah. So let's say I have a chat feature and I want to roll it out, but I don't know what the load is going to be on my server for the chat feature. This is a real thing. Someone's actually done this, right? You roll the feature out. You don't turn it on for the end users, but you simulate the traffic using real end users, right? So now you get the load without people actually being pissed off that you turned off a feature that they start to love, right?
It's actually crashing service if you're not expecting.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You can dial it in slowly, right? Say for 10% of our users, we want this feature to be on, but we don't want to show it to them, right? So for 10% of the users, they're now doing chat messages are going back and forth behind the scenes
That they didn't create.
They're all junk, right? But the purpose for them is to test the feature. Is the feature working? Can we sustain the load? Can we do all these things? Now when you turn that feature on, you know with real traffic, real users' behavior, right? What's going to happen before it happens, right? So that's dark launches. So launching the feature in the background, simulate the traffic. So again, you can monitor the feature functionality. You can see what the impact on your system is going to be. Operational control. Any thoughts on this one?
Turn off bits that aren't working.
Yes, something screwed up. And SA can go in and say, you know what, this feature is misbehaving. I do not need to redeploy this application to turn it off, right? So I can turn off the bits that are misbehaving, right? Another thing you can do is you can slowly roll out the features, right? You can dial it in, dial it out. Go ahead.
So this is the third time that I've managed to pick bullet number 1
Yeah,
without ever having seen your presentation.
yeah, it's something, right? It's proximity. Again, this is what speaking does for your career. You start anticipating things. I'm not sure if it's true. I'm not sure it's true, but I'm going to sell that.
Okay,
All right.
Judy Roberts.
All right. So you can turn off low priority features. Let's say your server is under load, right? The SAs, right? This is now operations doing these things. Server's under load. You need to figure out some ways of getting some extra bandwidth in, right? Turn off features that are low priority, right? So they can do this on the spot. You know, you can get your metrics in. And you say, okay, we're spiking, we're doing this, we're doing whatever. We have a dashboard now. We can go and turn things on and off, or dial them back. Say, hey, for these sets of users, we're gonna turn that off for you because you're not actually using it anyway. Or for this percentage of our user base, we're gonna turn it off, right? Again, feature flags, right? Ooh, this is another one I like too. So you can allow the customers. When I say customers, I mean they're like the system owners, the people that own the system, to determine when things get launched, right? So you roll into production, and then they click the flag to say it's now rolled out, right? So you don't have to wait for them, right? You can, as a developer, you keep rolling things out, and they determine when they do their launch campaigns or whatever the case may be, they hit the big red button, and it's in production, right? That's a feature flag. That feature flags enable that capability, right? It also enables them to learn who gets it as well, right? So technical debt. So once you have these feature flags in place, you have to remember to go back and evaluate them, right? You don't want a bunch of if statements all over your code base that are no longer valid. If everyone's getting this thing, then why is the flag still there, right? If you're never going to turn it off, remove the flag, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that too as well. All right, let's look at some code. All right. Nothing ever goes wrong with the live demo. But, that looks like it's going to go wrong, so let's not do that. All right. So let's take a look. I have feature flags in my code base.
White instead of.
No, because dark theme is awesome, especially now that I've upgraded and I can do dark theme for everything. All right. That's where I need to be. All right, so all these were. No, it doesn't. I'm scared to click it. All right, so let's take a look at my application. So I have this application here that we've built in-house, and this is going to be an example of rolling your own, right? So within our system configuration area, we have a thing called feature flags, which is already on screen here. So we have these 4 feature flags that are there, and they control various aspects of our application. If you notice on the right here, it says 23 actors, 6 actors, 2 and 2, right? So those, if I were to click into this feature flag, these are a list of the actors or people or groups, right? Because this, one of them is a group, others are users that have access to this particular feature, right? And so if I go in and say, turn this feature off, I hit save the feature flag. You see this portal thing over here? Because I think that's the one we're looking at. If I refresh that, it's gone, right? It's gone for everyone because the flag is turned off completely. I am demoing prod. That's what real men do, right? I may get fired later, but I mean,
Someone was just on the portal page. It's gone.
but it's back. So just refresh your screen. Right? So now it's back. And what I want to do is show you, come on, go away.
Chrome.
All right. If I screwed up, all right, let's go.
If it's
Network.
saying it's using Chrome.
I don't trust it. Demos, anything can go wrong. All right. So here's my API coming in, right, from the server. And this config API endpoint has my feature flags in it, right? So right now you see portal is false, and that's why it's not showing up. Refresh that and go back to that config. Feature flag, portal is now true, and it shows back up, right? So I can control who sees that when they see it. Admins can control who sees that and when they see it. So again, separating the rollout of the feature from separating the deployment of the feature from the rollout of the feature, right? And we have a bunch of other areas in there. So some of them, you can see there's only 2 people in it. Some of them, there's various types of people in there. Some of them are still in beta, right? So there's only a few people. Some of them are only intended to ever be for a subset of people. So we're using it, our feature flags, but also in that way as a kind of a security gate as well, right? So let me show you a little bit of how we did this. You can see there's a couple of things in here. There's a name, there's active, there's a description, and there's a list of approved users. So our feature flags is pretty basic, right? And so let's look at some code. Let's not use that one. We're going to use this one. Make this bigger, make that. Is that readable?
Yeah.
All right.
You're encrypting between points, aren't you?
Encrypting between
Yeah, between the server and your user.
HTTPS.
Yeah,
But,
HTTPS.
yeah.
It's encrypted.
Yeah. All right. So here's my feature flag class that I use. Like I said, pretty basic. The name, the description is active, and I have a list of actors, those people that are approved to go through it, right? My configuration controller, the one that you saw earlier, that set down that data, here is the feature flags here. So this section right here populates my feature flags. One of the things that is interesting, so most people you'll see, you'll have a, when I asked the question earlier, who does the if and it has a Boolean in there, one of the reasons you don't want to do that is because a Boolean, you cannot, how do you say this person can see that or that group can see that if you're using a Boolean directly, right? So
It's either on or off.
it's either on and off. So you're going to either be able to deploy to everyone or you're not going to be able to deploy to anyone. So what you want to try to do is have a function, something along the lines of this feature flag service that says can access. You send in the flag, but you also send in the current user. And then that'll determine whether that flag is on or off for that user or that actor or that group or whoever it may be, all right? You'll also notice something else too as well. This guy is a enum, and it basically, I use this to get that flag back, and then I put that flag in here. Some of the other ones you'll see, you'll have a string in there, right? What do you think are the reasons you don't want to necessarily use a string? To say, because under the covers, let me go over here. Under the covers, we are using a string here, right? So portal, it says get feature flag, and it sends in the string portal. But why do you not want to use a string in your function call in your code to set your flags?
You have to make a change. You have to make a change.
Yes.
Or
So
if you can't spell.
So for those that know me, know I cannot spell, but I misspell everywhere the same, so therefore it's okay in code. But no, if you like me and you can't spell, you misspell something, then now you have a different flag, and you're wondering why this flag is not being turned off or the speech is not going off, right? The other major one is what Leighton said. Like if I want to go back, remember I talked about that technical debt and cleaning things up. How do I go and find all the places that says portal when I have a whole feature called portal? Right? How do I find the flags and remove them? All right. So in this case, I can delete this property, and everywhere that, my application will no longer compile for everywhere that's using that flag. All right. So I can just follow the compiler errors and go all the way down the line. It says I know for sure I have deleted this feature, this flag. All right. So that's a little lesson learned there that I've gone through as I was looking up how to do feature flags. I think we're running low on time. So any questions on this before I show you one other thing? So this is I rolled my own feature flag sort of thing, right? So I'm going to show you the feature flags as a service by a company called Launch Darkly. Anyone ever heard of them? Actually, take it back. Yes. But any questions first, and then we'll go into Launch Darkly. No. All right. So Launch Darkly is a feature flags as a service, which you're thinking, how can you do a whole business around feature flags, right? But they can, and they're pretty good at it. Let me see if I can find the right. No, that's not the right one. Let's get rid of it altogether. Let's go here. All right. So this is Launch Darkly. I created a feature flag within there. I'm going to create another one just so we can see the process for doing that. Launch Darkly. So you can try it out for free. How do I get there? Maybe going off script here. Sucks. All right. Feature flags. Let's add a new one here. So we'll call this one GSFC demo. We won't put a description in or tags, but you can see there's quite a bit more here, right? So we can do save this flag, create another flag, but now look at all the things that we can do. Crap, actually, what I wanted to show you guys is something a little bit different. This is kind of what I want to show you. So who's writing JavaScript? Who's writing something other than JavaScript? All right, so that should cover everyone. If you're not doing one of those two things, I'm not sure why you're in here. But depending on what language you're using, they have an SDK for you, which is beautiful, right? So let's say we're doing JavaScript or we're doing something else. Someone pick something else because I did Java. Good old Java. Let's see if they're still cool. They're cool. All right. So if I go to Java and I say that my environment is production, then it gives me exactly the steps I need to take in order to add this feature flag to my environment, right? Literally inside of here, this line of code, this right here, is unique to me, right? They've given me exactly, all I gotta do is copy and paste this into my application and start using it. So I followed that for JavaScript, and I put in a feature flag into my application. Let's see. Let's switch over to this one. All right.
What's the cost?
Costs nothing right now because I'm just demoing it. I'm not sure. I didn't get that far into it. But let's say, for example, here's my Launch Darkly demo, right? I did it for JavaScript, and I didn't want to. Again, I was doing this like 20 minutes ago. Not 20 minutes ago. That's not a lie. Like 2 hours ago. I just added in there the URL from there, but you can add in a node package, right? As you would really do it in real life. I added the script in so I can say who the user is, right? And then I can, this is just creating a div so I can show what's happening, initializing it. Here's my little thing that goes in, and don't worry if you copy that because it's gonna go away right after this demo. And then a little thing here saying, is this feature on and off for this particular person? So that's all that right there is all the code that I need to interact with their service and more. Interact with their service and display it on my screen that I'm interacting with their service, right? So let's actually see it in production. Man, I wish it would just go to the other one instead of keep coming over here. Again, in production, because I didn't have time to put together a demo area. Let's put this feature, it's easier to see it here. So here it says user down here. I hope I didn't break this because I did move it. Crap, I think I did break it. Let me try to fix it real quick. So it's available to the code before it gets there. Come on. Oh, demo guys are not working for me. Come on. Ah, shoot. All right. So what you would have seen is it should turn the users the things on and off here, but it should show whether or not it's on and off. But I can still show you the other parts of this. So let's go back to our feature flags. And we have this portal one. And I can go into the settings. I can say, is this true or false? I can also say who it should go to. But notice, I already showed you all those things for the one I wrote my own. So what is the difference between rolling my own and this one? This is where it gets good. You get insights into this. You get telemetry, metrics, all type of things in there. So if I go to change that flag to as well to say, I'm changing it from true to false. Say I change it from true to false and I try to save it. It's going to ask me, why the hell are you changing this thing? Right? who's changing it. All these things that you wouldn't think of doing initially, but they've thought about this stuff ahead of time. Like if they're flipping flags on and off, you want to know who did it and why they did it, when they did it. You want to also know, remember that A/B testing thing I talked about before? You can show those metrics. You can actually start tracking things to say, okay, they can help you satisfy that test to say, is this feature doing what I expected to do, right? Just by you adding a line of code, say, hey, track this thing, right? And now because you're tracking the thing, whatever your goal is, let's say they hit the sign up button, right? Now you can test it and say, okay, in this scenario with this feature flag, on or off, these are the metrics based on those things. So now you have your built-in A/B testing, which is something that's not quite easy to do, all right? And there's so much more to it. Like I said, you get a complete history of all those things as well. All the changes, like I said, I was working on this 2 hours ago, I set it up. You get all the references to the code as well. You get so many, like I said, there's so many things. I don't have time to dive into all of it right here. But again, it's one of the reasons why Launch Darkly is like so popular right now. A lot of applications that you use and depend on now actually depend on Launch Darkly behind the scenes, right? So that's two options. Like I said, roll your own. There are a plethora of libraries within your own code base that can probably do feature flags as well. And then you have the as a service thing, which Launch Darkly, I think, is the one I hear most about, but there's others in the market as well. Any questions on feature flags? I think we're getting close to the end.
If Launch Darkly goes offline, does your application stop working?
No, because you just get the default of whatever was left, whatever was last, right? Good question, though.
Have one if you needed a little William flag is service available.
Yeah, I'm sure
If
they
not,
thought over that already, right? Depending on my only gripe with Launch Darkly within our environment is that you are sending things out of the net, out of our, right? You're sending it to their service.
Telemetry to them.
Yeah, right. So that can be problematic. But if you're rolling your own thing off, somewhere else or in a public environment or arena, or you're acceptable to that, right? Because the benefits you get outweigh the, whatever, and the security people are like, yeah, thumbs up, go ahead and do it. But you control completely what goes there. So I think in this case, they have several features like, I want to send this data, but I want to anonymize this. I want to do this. I want to do that, whatever. They have, I know the one that I looked at first, I looked at the JavaScript one, the C# SDK, and they have they have a lot of things already laid out for you. You just have to go and turn things on and off, right? And configure things as well. Rolling your own, like I said, is not overly difficult. Getting it right can be, right? Or depending on what your use cases are. For example, I showed you before, the only thing I had was allow. But what if I want to say, I wanted to allow this to everyone but these people? That's a whole different set of functionality. I don't have history tracking on there, right? So I don't know who turns it on, when they turn it on, when they turn it off. And a number of other things that like, well, for my use case, maybe I need it, maybe I don't. For your use case, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you have to make that determination. But what I do think everyone should be using is feature flags within your code base. If there's any deviation between things, if you're not staring a static site where everyone gets the exact same content, even then, you still use A/B testing there as well, right? Feature flags is a very useful concept that I think now not everyone actually knows about, I think. So that's it for me. Any other questions? All right. So next time, whatever that is, Leighton's going to be doing our ASP.NET Core, I believe. Then after that, we have some of the cloud people coming in to talk to us about some of the cloud things that are happening here. So there's the AWS stuff happening, there's GCP stuff happening. I haven't heard directly of any Azure things happening, which is kind of unfortunate because that's one I would choose over the others. But
I've heard that we have an Azure rep and it's being worked, but I've heard that from like other Azure people outside of NASA, not with.
Yeah. So when you speak to Joe, one of the things that he mentioned before was that the way they're trying to do things is supposed to be cloud agnostic. That being said, and I brought the point like, well, if you're cloud agnostic, why is everything AWS, right? He brought up a good counterpoint to say, they got to start somewhere, right? So they're starting with AWS. All the framework that they're putting in place is supposed to be cloud agnostic, but they need to do one of them first, and then they'll do the other ones afterwards. But there are other initiatives from other centers that are starting in different places.
So someone brought up to me about the fact that the CIA is getting away from AWS. So the CIA started in 2013, and they started with AWS.
Mhm.
But now the new contract, they actually got to do the normal federal government competing.
Mhm.
So it can't be just an automatic win to Amazon.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
we have to think agnostic.
So I'm trying to think of the right term, because it's always it's
Right to compete? Or?
no, not that. So there's a phenomenon that happens where if you're the first to market, the thing that you are gets named after you, right?
Trademark.
Not trademark. It's like I'm trying to think of what it is, like Pampers and diapers.
Frisbee.
Huh?
Like name recognition.
Yeah, like
Branding.
No, it's not. It goes beyond branding. It becomes where your name, your brand, becomes the name of the thing, like Band-Aid, right? Or
Xerox.
or Xerox, right?
It becomes a general
Kleenex,
term.
right? Yeah. So AWS has that, right? So when people say cloud, they mean AWS. Well, they say AWS when they mean cloud, right? And so because of that, everyone goes there first. I'm not saying they're a bad vendor, but they're not the most user friendly, right? They're not the best for every scenario. Like if you're going to do machine learning, you should be in GCP, right? If you're going to do like industry level stuff, you should probably be in Azure. Like but again, it's brand recognition.
But
And
what I'm trying to say
but
is that
we're kind of going over now.
we're in an environment where you can be sued for just not doing an open compete.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not open. I'm just saying that. Remember I said the people, let me stop